Hello there. Hello.
Hi.
It's Bec and Deb here with your YouTube show, this week's show.
Welcome.
And it's great to have you with us. So just before we dive in, as always, we like to let you know what we're up to, what's going on, so that you don't miss out.
Well, nobody wants to miss out, do
No,
they?
they don't. And so we often regularly, Deb and I kind of review what we're doing in our business, what programs we've got, what events we have coming up, just to make sure that we're always giving the best we can. So the program we've been reviewing recently is our mentoring program. And for the time being, we've decided that's going to be a one-to-one program. And we've been looking at what we're offering as part of that, how we can work with people, what's going to make it the best and most amazing 3 months you could possibly spend with us. So we just wanted to let you know that was happening, and that there's quite a few extra bits in there that we haven't done on mentoring before. And so if that's something you might be interested in, if you're looking to maybe deep dive with us into this conversation and this understanding, if there's maybe areas of your life that you've been kind of tempted to look at a little bit, want to start exploring, and you know us, it's always going to be fun and playful. So that program's now available. We're opening up at least 5 spots on that over the next couple of weeks. So if you want to know some more about that, we would love you to get in touch. That program is only ever open once we've had a conversation with somebody. So if you'd like to have a conversation with us about whether that might be for you, please drop us a message or get in touch with us. You know, we've got an email address, debbu@gmx.co.uk, or you can have a look on our website and send us a message through there.
Yeah, we would love to hear from you about that.
Yeah.
And the other thing that we have got coming up is our hangout. Now, originally when we planned the hangout, we were going to have people come here and hang out with us in person for a couple of days. But obviously, as things stand at the moment, that isn't possible. So we've moved our hangout online, so we can open it up. You know, a few more spots can be opened up in there. So if you want to hang out with us online, and it is on the, I had to write it down because I'm not thinking dates, 22nd and 23rd of May. So if you would like to join us for that, please do be in touch, or you can find it on our website. But just get in touch with us and we can add you to that program. It would be really, really lovely to have you with us.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the online hangout.
Me too.
A little bit different to what we were expecting, but
yeah,
it should be lots of fun. Yeah, so on with the show. So living and learning this week. Oh gosh. Oh, so many things.
Technology
so
has been
ways.
Teaching me a lot of lessons this week.
Patience.
Yes, patience has been my living and learning, I think.
Yeah, it's really interesting actually, isn't it? Because that in some ways has also been, I think, my thing, but not around technology particularly. I mean, it is at the moment with kind of the corona situation and the lockdown rules and that kind of stuff, it does feel like there's learning every week around kind of life and how life is, you know, doing something a little bit unexpected at the moment. And very much like, for me, it has been around that patience thing and that living in the unknown that we often talk about. That, you know, at the beginning of this, when we kind of got our announcement in England, it was, you're going to be in lockdown for 3 weeks and then we'll see what makes sense from there. And then it was kind of, okay, yeah, I can kind of do 3 weeks, and then it was another 3, and then we've just kind of had our announcement in the last couple of days before recording this, around kind of the next stage, which is another couple of weeks at least of what we've been doing. But there's been a slight change in the rules, and it's been really interesting to me to watch what my mind does and what stories I make up about what's okay about that and what isn't okay about that. You know, in the places, my particular situation means that that's okay, but that isn't. It's okay that we can go out for walks. That's great because I live in a great place for that kind of thing. But it's not okay that we can't mix households because my partner lives miles away and we can't just meet for a walk. It's not quite so convenient to do that when it's miles and miles to sit, you know. And these kinds of stories are what is playing out for me. And definitely what I've been watching kind of happen for me is the moments where that doesn't look okay. Really doesn't, you know, quite seriously doesn't look okay for a moment or two. And the places where actually it does look okay, because that's been surprising to me too. Like the moments where it's like, oh, this is actually okay here. And I don't know, I mean, I know obviously we live together and work together, so we're kind of in a similar scenario, but I don't know if any of that's been what's any of your living or learning in the last week or so. It has patience definitely is real.
Patience has been, and the kind of, it has definitely, with everything that's been going on, it has kind of been one of those times, like something we talk about quite a lot is like walking our talk.
Yes.
And I think this has been a, you know, are you okay even here? And definitely those moments when it's kind of like, actually, I've definitely seen some moments in myself where I'm kind of like, no, I don't like that, and I don't want that. But what's been really, really interesting to me is the more that I'm kind of aware of how my mind works and aware of what it means when I feel certain things and what's going on, it's been a really, really different experience. So some of the people that we speak to, some of the people, you know, that we're our clients that we have online stuff with, it's clear that when we don't know what those feelings are telling us, it's not a great place to be. It's really difficult. So it's been interesting, you know, watching, having conversations with different people and kind of watching, when we get caught in what we believe is an absolute reality, that is really painful.
Yeah, it's, and like when you were kind of sharing there, what came to me was that how our reality, how our kind of what comes through us is personal to us. Like we were having a conversation this morning, weren't we, about like in those moments where I don't feel so okay, the reason, like in my mind, that I'm like, this bit isn't okay, for somebody else that would be irrelevant. Perfectly, it would be a nothing, it would be a it wouldn't wobble them or worry them at all. And when we were kind of talking this morning, we were talking, I kind of saw this metaphor. I quite like funny little picture metaphors in my own mind that help me, and I really saw this. What kind of happens for us as humans is that we get a story or a thought in our head that comes dressed up in something that appeals to us,
so that it hooks us in. It is a little bit like a worm on a hook when you're fishing, isn't it? Like a fish isn't going to jump up and see a hook and go, oh yeah, I'm going for that. You need a worm,
but it's got something on it that's appealing to tempt you,
and underneath it is a hook.
Yeah, and the fish won't, you know, kind of know that and go, oh, juicy worm, you know.
And our stories are like that.
Exactly that. And our stories are kind of wrapped up in a flavour that's appealing to it. Like worms aren't appealing to me.
No.
So my thoughts aren't going to be wrapped up in a metaphorical worm. But we were talking this morning and I kind of said to Deb, I see it as like, you know, I remember when I was a kid and my mom did a lot of things to try and get me to eat vegetables, you know.
As
parents do, yeah. And it's like, if my mom had wrapped up a vegetable in my favourite chocolate bar, I'd have been way more likely to be kind of drawn in.
Especially if you didn't know, if all you saw was the chocolate and you didn't realise there was a vegetable in it, because that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like it's wrapped in chocolate.
I don't know. Have this chocolate.
And that's it. Before I knew it, I'm eating a vegetable. That to me is what happens for us as humans. You know, and my mom would have known what my favourite chocolate was and what my sister's favourite chocolate, and she'd have wrapped those vegetables in different chocolates.
And also what you see is when you do get it, when you bite into it, there is, because that to me is, again, like the fish with the hook, really.
Yeah.
There's a worm, and so he goes for the worm, and then he gets a nasty shock in a way. And I think as human beings, that's what we do. When we follow our thinking, it is wrapped in our favourite chocolate. But when we actually take a bite of it, we don't get really nice chocolate all the way through.
No, we get a momentary taste of chocolate maybe, and then it's like that kind of more raw vegetable.
Yeah.
And that's it. Our thinking comes, our stories come wrapped in whatever's most appealing to us, and what might be appealing to me might not be so appealing to you. So I go following it and I get that first taste of, it's right that, you know, I should complain about the fact that I can't visit my partner, but it's, you know, that's compelling to me in the same way that my favorite chocolate bar would be compelling to me. And for someone else, that won't be their story, that won't be their experience in the same way. Yeah, but for them, it would be something else. They'd be like, oh, I could totally live with not seeing my partner, but not being able to visit my mom, or not being able to go to my favorite shop, or, you know, whatever it might be. And so I've really been seeing again that we get drawn in where it's our particular flavour, where it's our particular, you know, what is most compelling to me, what is most compelling to you, is what's going to hook you. isn't it? And that's what I've been seeing again, is that kind of, there's so many moments where I'm perfectly okay with what is,
and then a thought comes along dressed in chocolate,
in Cadbury's cream egg, and I'm like, but it is that, isn't it? It's like, we get pulled for a minute into that story. But what I've also been seeing is that underlying okayness bubbles up for me so much quicker, so much more, like the walk in your talk you were saying about earlier, because we are in this conversation and we are doing this kind of challenging ourselves, talking about it, inviting ourselves, seeing the invitations from the universe. I find that I pull away from those stories a lot quicker.
Yeah, and you don't necessarily fall for them as much as
not quite so, you
used to, and it
that's
can
not
be
really
like
a cream egg,
yeah,
is it, Mum?
I'm not sure that is chocolate all the way
that's
through.
a sprout hidden in there, isn't it, Mum? I've got we can see that, we
begin to get, and sometimes hook, line and sinker, we go for it. Yeah, absolutely. And get really reeled in by it. Definitely. I've kind of seen that, but it is, once we find out, hey, do you know what, be a little bit suspicious about those things that are wrapped in that way. I think it is easier, because I know when we were having our conversation earlier, I was talking about the other week, like, technology is definitely something that has been teaching me a lot lately, because we had this printer moment, didn't we? And definitely, there was a point, and Bec said to me, Deb, you're caught in your head, just leave it, let's go and have some lunch. And that, if we look at that, the thought that came then was, no, I am not caught up in this, Bec, you are wrong. And I was kind of a little bit annoyed with her that she even suggested that I was caught in my head. And that kind of feeling is the proof that you are caught up in your head. And yet, definitely it was really appealing to go with, Bec, what do you know? I'm perfectly okay. Leave me alone. That's kind of, that was the chocolate. That was the thing that was kind of really trying to reel me in, if you like. But because of what we do understand about our mind, because we have been pointed in this direction that we're pointing you today, because we are suspicious of that, there was another thing in there that said, Bec's right. But definitely, the kind of the chocolate, the fish on the hook, did not want Bec to be right. And it's really, really easy. That was definitely very appealing, to go for that and not to kind of listen to this. Well, what if Bec is right, and maybe you do need to walk away from this for a minute. But it was quite difficult in that moment.
Yeah, and it is, isn't it? That, that's, for me, that is why our stories are particular to us, because it's not, in some ways, it's not supposed to be as easy as that. If a story came, like, it's like if you're watching a film and it doesn't really draw you in, what's the point in watching it? In a way, a massive part of this being human is that we get drawn in, is that we have those moments where we can go, oh, for a minute there, I forgot that I was perfectly okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like, there's some fun in that. Like, there's fun for me in those moments where I love my partner so much that I miss him, that I'm going, I can't live without you. There's some fun in that for a moment, because we like that, don't we? We like that kind of connection with other people. But when it stops being fun and I'm really struggling and suffering, then it's knowing that the freedom is built in, knowing that we don't have to do that game.
That's what I love. I mean, I think we're here to be human, and part of being human is kind of having all that, but we don't have to suffer. Suffering is optional. We have, the way this works, it allows us to fall in love. It allows us to kind of see, live in duality, if you like. It allows other people to exist. It allows us to have flowers and trees and all the beauty and nature, and all of that stuff is because of the way that this all works. And built into it is the way not to suffer. We don't have to suffer, but we have the free will to suffer or not to suffer. And for me, we are capable of understanding, and we are capable of working out how not to do it. But it's not easy. It's not kind of the easiest thing that we have to do, because this whole system, it's absolutely mind-blowingly amazing the way that it works. And, so we have to choose to do that. We have to kind of, we have to look in that direction and work at it and work it out. But it's kind of part of the fun. I mean, one of the things that we've been doing during lockdown is having a family quiz each week. And this week we had a whole list of anagrams to work out. And, you know, part of the fun of it was working them out, was kind of coming up with all these words. No, that one doesn't fit. No, that one's not right. And then when you do get it, it's like, yes, I got it. It's right. And I think, you know, how life works is a little bit like that. It's kind of, there's fun in it. It's not just handed to us on a plate like that, but we can choose not to suffer, and we can look in this direction, and we can work it out. And we might get it wrong, like we did a few times with the anagrams. Before we found the right one, we got it wrong a few times. And definitely I have had a lot of times when I have struggled and suffered, and it is like, yeah, I can see every time that has come through misunderstanding. And yet, as I start to understand the struggling and the suffering, you know, that is the bit that goes away. And yet the amazing part of life, the wonderful part of this stays. You know, the lovely stories, the bits that I really like, but I don't have to suffer if I don't want to. But it's not easy always.
No, it's not. No, and it is one of the other things that kind of for me that I've been watching kind of happen in my mind in the last kind of week or so around kind of my living and learning. When 2006, about 14 years ago now, I went traveling for nearly 5 months on my own, kind of around the world, did a few different places, Africa, Australia, America, those, you know, the bigger continents, quite a long way from home. And for the first couple of weeks, my partner Andrew came with me on those travels, and then after a few weeks he had to go back to work, and I kind of went off on my own. So there was about a 3.5, maybe 4 month period where we didn't see each other. And I think that's the longest we've gone in our relationship of kind of not seeing each other. And just last night, I was kind of in my head going, it's been about 2 months, I think now, since we've seen each other because of lockdown. And I was kind of like, oh, that's interesting, isn't it? Because what I saw in that, like when I was away traveling, I did miss him. Like there was, you know, we had phone calls, and this was before smartphones. It was a proper normal phone call, no picture messages or anything. And so, you know, but I purposely said, I'm going away. Are we good to have
you chose to do it?
Yeah, it was like I chose to go into that situation. I still kind of had those moments of missing him and having, like, I even had some moments of, I'm just going to get on the next plane and come home, forget this, I want to be, you know. But what I'm kind of seeing is the difference in the story I'm telling this time about not being able to see him,
as opposed to the story
versus the story of I'm having the trip of a lifetime, so this is okay, versus somebody else has told me I can't see him. Like, and the way that whichever story we put on those things, we're going to get that experience and that feeling. And I've just been watching, and not even with a judgment of I should or shouldn't have those stories.
Yeah, it's just going to show you what you're going to have.
Yeah, that's the experience I'm going to have.
Yeah, I've been seeing that a lot more and more, you know. And the way I describe myself, you know, if I think, oh, I'm a boring person, I'm going to have the experience of being a boring person and being bored. And if I have, you know, kind of like, oh, I'm sensitive, or I'm whatever it is, whatever those things, when we kind of label ourselves, we do get that experience of ourselves, don't we? Yeah, I've noticed that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think with all of my living and learning this week, it only really leaves one person to be my loving, and that's my very beautiful Andrew. Because he is extremely patient with me when I have my little wobbles and my moments of, why haven't you just snuck down the M5 to visit me? He hasn't. But yes, he is definitely my loving this week.
Oh, that's so sweet. Well, my loving this week is going to be, I don't know if any of you watch our lives on our page, and each week we send out on our mailing list a daily inspiration every day, and then once a week we do a live on our Facebook page, and we choose one of our daily inspirations and read it out. And this week I chose the daily inspiration that said, thank you to everybody who opens and reads those little daily inspirations. And we had some amazing feedback from, you know, people saying, yeah, we love them, keep them coming, they're great, we really enjoy them. Because sometimes, you know, when you're writing things like that, it can get a little bit like, am I just writing this to myself? Why am I doing this daily inspiration? Why am I doing this? And yet, but it's really, really, really great. So I am loving all those wonderful people on our mailing list who read the daily inspirations and make it worthwhile that we do them. That's my loving for this week.
Brilliant. So our question this week, I'm going to have to look up at the board because it's a long one. I'm not sure if I'm going to trip over it. Our question this week is, what do you do when you don't know what to do? That's long-winded, isn't it? I think this was one of those questions that kind of came, I don't feel like someone asked it directly, but it was more like in conversation, you're kind of like, but I don't know what to do. And then it's kind of off the back of that, when you're kind of talking to someone and you know, whether it's a situation they're in or a circumstance they're not sure about, when we kind of go into that space for a minute, I don't know what to do here. And then it's kind of the question comes, well, what do you do when you don't know what to do? And although it's a mouthful of a question, it's in some ways a very simple answer. And to me, the answer is as simple as, when we don't know what to do in this moment here, we don't have to do anything. And I think sometimes what we can have it very much set up for us is that we should always have to have the answer and do something now. And it's very much for me like, when we've got stuff going on in our minds, or there's a situation we're not clear about, we don't always have to act right now. Like, there's nothing wrong with kind of having a moment, having a day. Like there's so many common sense phrases that we throw out, isn't there? Like, I'll sleep on it. You know, let's talk again next week because we're not sure to. And those things to me point to what we know is true. We don't have to have the answers in this minute if it feels like we don't know the answer in this minute. And so it is just for me that, I mean, I feel we'll talk about this for a little bit longer, but it's actually, it does come down to that simplicity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If we don't know what to do in this minute, that's okay. It's okay not to have the answer right now.
I think that is huge, because I think that was definitely something that for a very long time, I didn't know that I didn't have to have all the answers. And it was like one of those, if I don't know the answer here, then fake it. You know, absolutely make something up, do something, look as if you do know what to do.
Yeah.
I remember hearing a story. I think it was George Pransky. He'd been they'd gone into some huge corporation or something, some big business, and they were delivering like a business training or something. And they were kind of all sitting around the table and talking, and whatever it was, the people that he'd been sent, you know, to solve their problem, if you like, all sitting, and nothing was coming to him. And he'd got somebody who was training with him there with him, and so they said, oh, you know, shall we just take a break for a minute? And George said, yeah, no, I think it'd be a really great idea. And so this person that he was training kind of came up to him and said, well, what are we going to do? What are you going to say next? And George was like, I've got nothing. He's going, yeah, I know, but what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And we're going to, you know, we're going to lose the gig. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And he went, I've got nothing. It's like, yeah, but what are you going to do then? What are you going to do? And so just say we've got nothing. And he was like, this person was like, you can't do that. It's totally and utterly unacceptable. You know, you're the expert here. You know, you don't go in and say you've got nothing. And George was like, well, yeah, you know, I do. If I've got nothing, I'll go and say I've got nothing. And I can't actually remember what happened after that, but you know, George did go back and did say, I've got nothing. And it's one of those things that I'm kind of seeing more and more. Definitely, you know, I had it set up, and certainly as a mom, and then as a girlfriend or a wife or whoever we are in those kinds of things, it's really easy to set it up that, you know, if you're a mom, you should have the answers for your children. If you're the boss at work, you should have the answers for the people that you know, under you or whatever. And I've seen so many times how much we trip ourselves up when we will not just be honest and kind of say, do you know what, in this minute I've got nothing. And it is weird that, for me, what I have seen, the more that I am okay not to have anything, the more open my mind is for something really useful to actually come in.
Yeah, and that's very much what it is, isn't it? That it's like, answers often don't come from all the noise in our head.
No.
Like, I don't know if you've ever done similar to what I can do sometimes when I feel like I've got a puzzle or a it, like the anagrams, Deb, you know, it's a perfect example. Deb was talking about the anagrams a minute ago. I got those, they come through on our family chat group, and you know, whoever sent them earlier in the week, and I kind of look at them and I'm puzzling and I'm thinking and I'm saying letters and I'm saying names of, you know, and stuff's going, and there's a lot of noise in my head because I want to get the answer. And then it's like, do you know what? It's getting late. It's bedtime. I'll put them down. I'll look again in the morning, put the phone on, you know, lay down to go to sleep. As I do, I kind of close my eyes and think, wonder when sleep. Oh, Coventry. You know, that's one of the, and it just comes out of that space as my mind quietens down. Oh, there was those letters. I know that can make up. And I pick up my phone and go, oh yeah, turns out they're the letters. That's the answer. And it seems like, what it looks to me like we can do is, an anagram is fairly inconsequential. You know, if I don't get the answer right and someone else in my family gets more than me, there's probably little to no consequences to that, really. And what we can do sometimes is, yeah, that's easy with anagrams for a family quiz, but when it's my child, when it's my business, when it's my marriage, when it's, you know, fill in the blank, it's irresponsible to wait for my mind to clear, to trust that the answer will come.
I guess that's what George was pointing to when he was kind of, or, you know, certainly his student was kind of saying, George, you can't, this is not acceptable to say that you don't know.
You don't know. It's your responsibility to know. And that is that kind of counterintuitive. When we're putting more and more and more pressure on ourselves, our mind is so busy, how are we going to see something? You know, we don't see through fog.
And what if it is okay that we don't know sometimes?
Yeah. And
I mean, that's an interesting one just to play with, isn't it? You know, what if it is, when we don't know, you know, what do we do when we don't know what to do? What if it is we just sit with not knowing? And I know it always looks to me in those moments, you know, way back when my grandson was just a couple of months old, there was a moment when he wasn't very well and we had to ring the ambulance and all sorts of things happened. And it was literally like, in those moments, it wasn't even a case of we had breathing space to kind of be like, right, what do we do next? We were doing it. So to me, if you're in one of those situations and you're kind of going, well, you know, what do I do? What do I do here? The very nature of what we're doing there is we are in our head. Like for me, there wasn't space to think. When that happened with Zach, there wasn't space to think. We were acting before thinking happened.
Yeah, you're in that space of.
Yeah. And I think there is something about human beings. I mean, the reason that George Pransky could sit in that room and do that for me is because he absolutely 100% trusted that if he didn't know anything in that moment, he did not need to know anything in that moment. And putting his hand up and saying, I don't need to know right now because I don't. It's kind of unheard of in, you know, it's kind of like, no, that's not what experts do. And yet what he was pointing towards was that there is something about human beings that in a moment when we need to know, we do know, and we can trust that 100%. And I'm guessing he was kind of saying there is somebody in the room here who has the wisdom that is needed in this moment if it's needed. And it's kind of like, if there isn't anything, what if there just isn't anything here for us in this moment? And I think, you know, when we don't get caught up in life should work the way we think it should work, and if I've been put on the spot and need to know an answer, now is the moment that I need to know. And yet kind of playing around and just investigating with the, well, if you don't know, what if you don't know, and what if that's okay too? And I just think it sort of, it opens us up. It's a whole different way to be in life, isn't it? And I think the way that we have been in life up until now looks to me as if it often gets us into trouble. We suffer because of the way we are in life. We suffer because we believe the thought that it's unacceptable not to know. I have to know, and I have to know now. If we kind of got curious about, well, what if you don't know in this moment, and that's okay? It just seems to me like there's a whole, that opens a whole another side to things that we haven't explored and we haven't seen. And I just think human beings are so freaking amazing, but I think we keep ourselves small because we are scared to look at those things.
Yeah, it's very much that, isn't it? Because we kind of think, I'm supposed to know what to do, whatever's happening, pick any situation, any scenario. I am meant to know here. And if I don't know, I look stupid. I look, like in the case of George Pransky in his business situation, I don't look like a professional. I this, I that. And we have all these setups of what it means if we don't know. And we become very reliant on our intellect. And our intellect only has a certain amount of capacity, and that might be different person to person, but that kind of space in us that's beyond our intellect, that is limitless. That has everything in it. That has all of everything that we could ever need. And our intellect is actually the thing that mostly gets in the way of, when there are things to know. Like, we will often sit, Deb and I, and kind of, like I said earlier, we've been reviewing some of our business stuff recently, and we'll kind of get together and sit and do some of that, but from a fairly playful place. If we were meant to do a new program, what might that look like? Who might be involved? How long might it run for? And it is sometimes we're having these conversations. I don't actually know. I don't know who we should invite to be involved. I don't know if it's a 30-day program or a 3-month program. And if it's okay if I don't know, what do I know? And right now I might just know it's going to be about this topic. And then we can leave it. We can kind of be clear enough that if we don't know yet, we can leave that to kind of grow its own legs, if you like. And like, for me, it's like I only have to look out at the things in nature to kind of be reminded that we do that too. Like, we are nature. And I know we've said on a couple of the shows recently how much gardening and stuff we've been doing, and one of the things I've been growing from seeds are sunflowers. And oh my gosh, they're so beautiful. I love them. And I think I've got about seven or eight at the moment that are growing, and some of them are this big and some of them are maybe yay big, right off the screen big. And what I've kind of watched as they've been growing, each and every one of them is slightly different. One of them's got a leaf that's got a tiny bit missing, and it's almost like as it came out of the seed, it kind of got a little bit trapped and that bit of leaf didn't make it. And another one's kind of got 7 or 8 leaves that are already kind of showing up. And it's like, what kind of happens to me is nature just reminds me that everything that sunflower needs to grow into a full mature sunflower was in that seed from the beginning.
That is mind-blowing.
Absolutely mind-blowing. Like, this tiny seed that was kind of, I could barely pick it up in my fingers for fear of crushing it, had everything in it that it needed to become a sunflower. And it's not there yet, but I can see it. I can go in, and I regularly do, because I'm a little bit of a fuss pot with my flowers, and I can go in and I can see these tiny new little leaves just poking up through the middle of the big leaves. And it's just amazing.
It is amazing to watch them.
Absolutely.
To watch the plants, isn't it? The seeds, you put the seeds and you've just got this.
It happens in a moment.
It really does.
Like, I go in and look at them, and a few hours later I go in and there's a leaf that wasn't there a minute ago, and you're thinking, where did he come from? And it is, to me, that is the same for us. So when it's like, what do I do when I don't know what to do? In this moment, right here, right now, you have everything you need. And if the knowing what to do isn't there yet, we can trust that it will come when it's meant to. Like, I might go in and look at my sunflowers and think, you should be an inch taller already. It will be an inch taller when it's meant to be. But everything it needs is built into that. And we can get, as humans, we can get so above our station. Like, I'm there kind of trying to make my sunflowers taller and thinking, am I supposed to do something? Am I watering them too much? Not enough? Do I need something else in the soil? It's already there. And I have literally nothing to do with that process. It's done. It's being taken care of. And we are the same. Like, we so often, I hear people say, we're the same as nature. And actually what we mean is we are nature. Like, exactly that same process that happens for the sunflower happens for us and everything else in this whole universe. And so it's like, what we do is then say, oh no, but I'm supposed to know now. like my sunflower is supposed to be 10 foot tall now and it's 5 centimeters tall. No, it's going to be as tall as it's going to be in this moment, and then it will be a different height when it's a different height. We know when we know, and we don't have to rush that process.
It is, I suppose, when we mistakenly believe that life has to work on our terms. And I think, like you say, you know, things like plants are a great teacher, and it kind of takes us back right to the beginning when we were talking about our living and learning, and kind of saying patience. And I think and maybe trust too, because definitely with this topic, what do you do when you don't know what to do? Trust that you will know in the moment you are supposed to know. And, you know, the story about George really kind of showed that he was in a place he was perfectly prepared to trust that if he didn't know anything, he didn't need to know anything. And very much, you know, with the flowers and the seeds that, you know, we planted trays and trays of seeds, and each day we will go and look and see what's happening and what's not happening. And, you know, we have no choice really but to trust that if something is going to happen, it will happen, and it will happen not on our time. And yet I think we have certain things set up, you know, like if you have got one of those labels like a mom or a boss or a sister or anything, you know, you've got something that's like, oh, part of that says I need to know, you know, what to do with my child next, what I tell the people who work for me next, what, you know, anything that we just have those labels that come with, so I should know. And it's like, we'll know when we know. And it is kind of learning to trust, learning patience, and learning to trust, and learning to be okay with what is, because what is won't change. Like when you're saying, if I want my sunflower to be 10 foot tall now, all the wanting in the world is not going to make your sunflower any bigger than it is in this second. And when we don't know something, all the wanting in the world isn't going to make us know something we don't want. And it is kind of seeing that we can trust life. There is an intelligence here that we can trust, and we can trust that if we don't know, we don't need to know. And it really comes back as well to kind of the stuff that happened with Zach. You can really see in those moments when we need to know, somehow we just do. We're just doing what needs to be done.
Absolutely that. So our topic
Moving
this
on
week,
to our topic.
our topic this week is people are awesome, which coincidentally was the title of the daily inspiration that Deb shared in our weekly inspiration live this week.
I just love people.
Yeah, I think I'm going to let you start on this actually, because I feel we picked it because it was your kind of, you went for that weekly inspiration this week, didn't you, talking about how awesome people are. And so you said, let's make that our topic this week. So why don't you kick us off with people are awesome, Deb, because I know it's a pet favourite of yours.
It is an absolute pet favourite of mine. And I think for anyone who's kind of been following us for a while and knows a little bit about us, there was a good year or more, maybe 2 years, I don't know, when I did something called the Lovely People webinars. And the Lovely People webinars were born out of the fact that for a lot of years, when I was younger and when I was struggling in my life, I kind of thought life had it in for me, and other people were at best a pain in the neck, and at worst really didn't like me and were out to get me. So I kind of thought the world was a scary place that was out to get me, and people weren't really that nice mostly. There was a few kind of close people that were okay, but mostly people weren't very nice. And then I came across this understanding. I stumbled across, the truth about how life works, and the truth about who I am, who we all are. And my eyes were open to all these beautiful people in the world. And it was, it's like I'd been seeing life through weird coloured sunglasses or a veil, or I don't know, some kind of trying to make sense of life in a dark room or something. I just wasn't seeing straight. I wasn't seeing what was actually there. I wasn't seeing truth. I was seeing through all this made up rubbish that was going on in my mind. And all of a sudden, the world was just full of these beautiful people and lovely people and people who wanted to help and were being kind. And the world changed for me completely and utterly. So I started doing the Lovely People webinars. And kind of on my journey, at some point, I was asked to help out with a group of young girls who were footballers. They were a football team. And potentially, you know, with their skill at football, they should have been winning their league, the league that they were playing. I think they were about 15 or 16 maybe, and they should have been winning the particular league that they were in, and they weren't, because they were just getting caught up in a lot of thinking. But obviously at that point they didn't realize that. They didn't know what was going on. They were just really struggling to perform well on the football field. So I was called in to talk to this group of young girls who were footballers. So I was kind of like, how can I point them towards their own awesomeness? How can I point them in that direction? So I was just kind of having a think about it, and I was in that place of, what do you do when you don't know what to do? Because this was definitely one of those. So I just sort of sat with it, and then it occurred to me to search on YouTube. And I don't know if my son pointed me towards these videos. I'm not entirely sure. But if you go and search on YouTube, and if you put in "People Are Awesome," there's a series of videos that come up, and every year, I don't know who it is that does them, but they're just called "People Are Awesome," and they're just short videos of all sorts of people. They are fairly sporty and fairly achieving in that way, which was very fitting for my football team. But they're absolutely brilliant videos of people doing, you know, it kind of goes, oh, it really takes your breath away, you know, amazing roller skating things, and people jumping and, you know, doing backflips in the air, and putting the basketball in a basket that's, you know, so far away you could barely hit it, you know, just people doing awesome things. So I started my talk when I went in to share with these girls with this video, and kind of said, within us, every single human being is the capacity to be mind-blowingly awesome. And then this video was these videos were like people achieving that in all sorts of different ways. And I was kind of like, every one of you here, you know, you're in this football team, you've got this skill. And then what is it? Why aren't you out on the football field performing like that? Why isn't your awesomeness showing through? And to me, it looked no different when all those years, when there were all those awesome people around and I just wasn't seeing it. It's because we are caught up in lots and lots of thinking that looks so real to us. And when I just started to point out to them how thinking works, the fact that we have thinking, the fact that we can think, you know, oh, my friend hasn't texted me back. I text her and she's read the message and she hasn't texted me back. And then your mind is on that and not on being awesome on the football field. And I am really, really pleased to report that the girls actually won their league after being pointed.
Of course they did.
They truly did.
Brilliant. It's what was kind of coming to me as you were sharing there about how awesome people are. When you started by talking about the Lovely People webinars, I remember kind of that starting and the name even coming from, there was a lady that when I think you had meetups, didn't you? And she called them the Lovely People meetups. Like,
yes.
she felt like the room was full of lovely people, and that's kind of how you referred to people in the room. And we'd gone away to Wales. We went to Snowdonia to do a zip wire, and we decided we were going to climb Mount Snowdon as well, didn't we? At the same time, we did a bit of a weekend of it. And we'd gone camping and stuff, and I think it was the day we'd actually gone up and back down Snowdon, and we were pretty exhausted, and we'd gone to the shops to get our dinner for the evening, and we were just heading back to the campsite. And as we were kind of walking up the lane into the campsite, there was a lady in her garden, and we were kind of walking past some beautiful little cottage houses, weren't we? And there was a lady in her garden picking her sweet peas, wasn't she?
They were
picking
sweet
her
peas.
flowers.
Oh, they smelled so
and they
beautiful.
were beautiful. And I don't know if we said something to her first, or she said
think
something
we
to
did.
us.
I think I commented on the smell of the sweet peas,
Yeah, I
because
think
sweet
you
peas
did.
are a particular favourite of mine. I really do. They have such a beautiful scent.
Yeah, and so I think we kind of engaged at the start of the conversation. Just said to me, and she was kind of asking us about, you know, what were we doing? Have we been up Snowdon? And we just had a really nice, just back and forward, general chit chat conversation with this lady we'd never met before. And I don't even think we said anything about the work we did or lovely people or anything like that. We were just saying we've been up Snowdon, we're on the way back to our campsite with our food, and she was picking her sweet peas as we were chatting to her. And then as the conversation kind of came to the natural end, we'll have a nice evening, see you. And she went, here you go, have these sweet peas for your camping table. So all of that work she just put into collecting her sweet peas, that
was really
a moment, she was
wasn't it?
her house, she just handed them over. And we were just like, we just find that people do those kinds of things.
People are just kind
all the time. People are just lovely, awesome, kind. And that's always been a story that stuck with us. And the lady was called Emma. And for a long time we had a saying, didn't we? Where
the world is full of Emmas.
Because we just come across people like that all the time. And what was coming to me as you were sharing was a story. I read a book a while back about a lady that kind of was made homeless and lost her business in a series of unfortunate events. And off the back of that, she decided to go walking around the southwest coastal path, her and her husband, because they had nowhere to live and no business. So they kind of thought, well, let's go and do something like that. And as I started the book, my expectation was that
they were going to meet
story,
Emmas.
Yeah, the story was going to be a story of Emmas, you know,
awesome
as they
people.
as they kind of go around the path, because that, to my mind, is how life works.
Yeah.
When we kind of set out on our life and our adventures, we just come across people that are loving and giving and caring and helpful, and people are awesome. And what I kind of noticed happen as the book went on was that wasn't happening. This person was coming across people that were unhelpful, dismissive, miserable, rude. And it took me a while, and we had a conversation about it, didn't we? And I was like, what I'm seeing is, I was expecting that to happen because that's my view of the world. Because as I've got to know who I am and I've stepped into my awesomeness, I just see the world through that set of eyes. I see the awesome people in the world. I engage with people. I talk to Emmas who are picking their sweet peas, you know, and the world to me works from the inside out. So my experience comes from what I'm thinking in the moment. And I just feel awesome. Like I can see the awesomeness of me as both the essence of the entire universe and me as an individual human being. And so people that I come up against, people that I come across, are awesome. And that I saw, you know, in Deb's story when she said life used to be full of frightening, scary people. She was frightened and scared. You were frightened and scared of yourself. And so that's what you came across. And as I read this book, what I realized was this lady she lived in a world full of horrible people because she felt that inside herself. She was scared and fearful, and you know, people were rude. And it changed a little bit as the story went on. And I'm not going to even tell you what book it was or anything, because I don't want to kind of for you to have your own experience if it happens to be a book you pick up at some point. But what really came to me out of that story was that everything starts with us. Like we experience what we are feeling, what we are in touch with. And so there are moments where I come across people that are rude or are horrible, grumpy, are fearful, because I'm having that kind of momentary experience.
We are capable of having that experience too.
Just occasionally.
Just very,
and it
very
is that
occasionally.
kind of life reflects back to us what's going on for us. So it is like that moment where we met, and you know, there's probably hundreds of, for some reason that Emma and her sweet peas really stuck out. But we've come across people like that
time and again
in our lives, because we're living from that awesomeness. We're seeing that in ourselves, and we're putting it out, and we're seeing it come back. I
think other people are kind of, the role of other people is to teach you that, to show you. I can see all of those, you know, how my world used to be. All the people in my world were reflecting back to me where I was in that moment. And it is a kind of, so look out in the world, where are you in this moment? And you will see a world full of those people, because it really is interesting when we can kind of go out sometimes, you can go out in a bunch of people and somebody can come back and go, oh my gosh, wasn't that person we met miserable and horrible, and didn't that person look like that? And maybe you didn't see that. Maybe that was not your experience of that person. Or maybe you're the one who saw a miserable person and somebody else going, oh, they were kind and they were nice, weren't they? And it's just like, other people for me are your teachers. They are your biggest gift and your most amazing teacher. And it is kind of, absolutely, we don't see people out there and then they come in. We see people from in here, from within us, and what we get. So there's a whole world of awesomeness out there that starts by recognizing the awesomeness in you. And it's
I'm
beautiful.
reminded of that story where there's a guy who there's quite a big river, and there's sort of either side of the river there's sort of villages, and there's a guy that living in one village and he's moving across to the other village, and there's a ferry that kind of goes across between the two villages, so he's on the ferry with all his stuff moving over to the new village, and he kind of gets talking to somebody on the boat that's from the other village, and he kind of says, oh, I'm moving from that side to this side, and what are the people like over there? Are they nice? Are they friendly? Will I get on with them? Will I fit in? And the person who's asking kind of says, well, what were they like in your other village? Did you find them friendly? Did you get on with the people in the village you're moving from? Yeah. It was a lovely village. I had a great, lovely community. People were helpful. I liked them. We connected. Oh, you'll find this village is exactly the same. And then a week or two later, there's another person moving from the first village to the second village, and the same situation happens. The guy's kind of on the boat and he's moving, and he says to someone, I'm moving from that village to this new village. I'm wondering whether the people there are going to be friendly, because I'm moving from that village to look for some friendly people. Also, the village you're moving from, did you find those people friendly? Are you, did you get on with them? Well, not really, no, they were miserable. They weren't good neighbours. I didn't connect with them. Oh, then I'm very sorry to say that the people in the village you're moving to are the same. And it is that, isn't it? It's like,
because the people aren't people, the people are you. The people are reflections of you.
Yeah, and we actually shared that story in something the other day.
Yeah,
just
we
as
did.
you were talking, I was like, oh, perfect example. That is, we meet people where we are.
Yeah,
so our life is filled with lovely Emmas because we see that in us. We know that about ourselves, and we can forget, because as we say in this conversation, that is part and parcel of being human here. We can have those moments where we forget, but my life is predominantly filled with lovely Emmas picking sweet peas, because that is where I come back to. That is the thing that I come back to remembering, is that we are awesome as human beings, as this human spiritual balance where we meet. We are incredibly awesome, like beautiful sunflowers. And it is, for me, it's like the more I come back and remember that, the more I meet lovely Emmas.
And I think, fundamentally, that is who we all are. And so, in the moments when I don't see that, that's when I'm out of my true mind.
Yeah.
That's when I'm not myself. And everything in the world kind of reflects that back to me and points me back to my truth, points me back to who I really am. And it's a gift. So, if there's anyone out there who said, oh gosh, my life is absolutely rubbish, is this? And it's not about fault and it's not about blame. It's just a beautiful gift to kind of wake up to and see that there's not so much that needs changing as you think. It's not such a difficult, big job. This is kind of your true nature is awesome. Your awesomeness is waiting to be woken up and to shine out into the world and be reflected in all the people you meet and see. So I think it's quite exciting.
Yeah, I do too. So, just before we move on to what's next week, if anything in this show has kind of brought up anything for you and you want to connect with us, there's quite a few ways to do that. We're on Facebook, Dare to Be You with a Purple Heart. We have an email address, daretobeyu@gmx.co.uk. Got a website, daretobeyu.co.uk. You can sign up to our mailing list and get involved with what we're up to. We're on LinkedIn as Deborah Simmons. Is that everywhere that we are?
Did you say YouTube?
YouTube. Yeah, we're on YouTube, which you may know because that's probably where you're watching this, but just in case it's not, yeah, we're on YouTube as Dare to Be You. And we do, if somebody wants to connect with us, we do offer free half-an-hour calls to kind of connect and get to know a bit about you. So if that might be something that would be of interest, yeah, get in touch. It would be lovely.
And wherever you're watching this, we always welcome comments, questions, anything like that.
Topic ideas.
Feel free to reach out to us however it makes sense to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So next week, our question is, what does a healthy relationship look like? And our topic next week is jealousy. So yeah, it could be very interesting.
That could be very interesting. It could be. Yeah.
Wherever you're watching, whatever you're up to, thank you very much for joining us.
Have a really, really great week, and we will report back how tall our sunflowers are next week.
I might bring one on.
Might bring one on for you. A sunflower.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Have a great week. Bye.